Get ready to uncover how schools manipulate students' thoughts, stifle their potential, and how politicians steal money in the future of America from kids. Welcome to the JV Soul Show.
Heck yeah, we got a new series going on here. It's called Operation Anti-Indoctrination. How you doing, Producer Brooke, today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. So basically, this new series that we're doing, it's kind of more for the podcast viewers on the traditional platforms, but it's basically just kind of a more podcasty kind of just talking about stuff, not necessarily talking super fast. I'll talk, and Producer Brooke and I will maybe, I don't know, talk about other stuff at some points and other subjects and more than one thing per show.
There's going to be no visual except that we might put something up for YouTube.
And like
a picture for the entire thing.
And like music as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, you should be hearing music.
Yes, and the intro for this.
Yep. I'm pretty excited because I just kind of want to sit back, relax, and chat and not have to be under a 10-minute
yes, it's going to be
time limit.
A lot longer of a episode.
Yeah, whatever, 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. Not really going to be any restrictions on the time. And I don't know, we might talk about some other stuff like, I don't know, favorite pizza. Do you like pizza? I never know. Do you like pizza?
Sometimes.
You sometimes like pizza. That's not American. You have to, come on. You have to join the pizza train.
Okay.
Anyway, so first of all, I wanted to talk about, this is going to be an epic show. We're going to blow your mind today. Your mind is about to be blown. But first, I got to do the little education story of the week, which might be happening here. It says, Orange Man bad. Trump is bad. Just kidding. He was speaking at Mount Rushmore for 4th of July, President Trump, when he said, I have the quote over here. He said that against every law of society and nature, our children are taught in school to hate their own country and to believe that the men and women who built it were not heroes but that they were villains. Oh no. Oh boy, the Randy Weingardens of the world, the crazy education establishment elitists flipped out. They lost their you-know-what.
GB, are you trying to overload the mic?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
This is bad sound quality. It's his fault.
Okay. But anyway, everybody flipped out. Everyone flipped, And we don't usually talk about President Trump, obviously, just because, I mean, he's not that important to my life. He's just not. Like, I don't know, he's just not that important to me. The guy, whatever, he's president, who cares? But in this case, I'd like to, because this is the first time I've ever heard him mention the indoctrination that happens in schools, and this is the Operation Anti-Indoctrination podcast. So I would like to mention that and just say, you know what? He's right. Sorry if that hurts your feelings. He's right. President Trump was right. Now, obviously, I don't agree with, I'm not saying I agree with him on all issues. I don't. And I'm not saying I endorse him. I don't. We don't endorse really anyone on this show. But in that case, yeah, the guy was right. We are indoctrinated to hate America. I can tell. We have told stories, I believe, on the show, haven't we, about some of our crazy teachers? Yeah, we've told the stories.
Of course.
And
you want to tell about your teacher?
I don't even want to get into it right now. I mean, she was a nut job a couple years ago, the social studies teacher. Ridiculous.
We'll save that for another time.
Yeah, she really hated America, and it's in the curriculum too. They make you say that, hate loving your country, thinking it's the best, nationalism, that sort of thing. It's like Nazism. Nationalism and Nazism are like synonymous or some crap like that. So we're basically taught to hate America, and we're taught only the bad parts of our history. We kind of talked about that. We're kind of talking about that in the episode that's going to go up next Monday, where we talk about the history of America and how the founding values are so misunderstood in the history for, blacks, women, that sort of thing. But anyway, on to the main event, the meat of the show, the main course, if you will. We're gonna talk about I think we've made it seem like this whole education thing over the last 200 years, where education was completely revamped by so many different people and groups, was kind of unopposed. And in a lot of ways that's true. In a lot of ways there was not much opposition to it. Pretty much everyone went along with it, even though the American people were never clamoring for public school, they more or less went along with it. However, in one case, that is not true. There was one serious attempt to stop what was happening with education, the disaster that was unfolding. And it was in the 1950s, and it was called the Reese Committee. named after its the guy who founded it, Carroll Reese, or a congressman from Tennessee. But first, let's back up a little bit. So, in the 1900s, you have all these foundations. You have the crazy Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Endowment, and the Carnegie Corporation, the Ford Foundation. You have all groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Progressive Education Association, the NEA, the AFT, all these groups which are seeking to revamp education to basically what is a socialist view. You know, there was that 1941 book, Education for Destruction, which outlined how the Soviets had infiltrated American education in the 1920s and 30s and were basically, indoctrinating kids in the classroom. And that was the view. What was happening. You know, and when I say 1950s communism, you kind of think of like McCarthyism, right? And here's the thing about McCarthyism: it was wrong. Let's not make any excuses for McCarthyism. Which, if you don't, it's do you know who Joe McCarthy was? Joe McCarthy?
Nope.
He was a senator. I believe he was a senator in the 1950s, and he basically did witch hunts of people and I think whitelisted them. If you were supposedly found to be a communist, you were whitelisted from everything, and it was a lot of witch hunts, and basically everyone eventually realized that it was wrong. So nobody's defending McCarthyism, but it wasn't entirely unprompted. There was certainly Soviet infiltration of American culture and academia, and it was not good. And it was especially in the Ford Foundation, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Carnegie Corporation, all these groups. So in the 1950s, everyone's kind of concerned about that because no one really liked the Soviet Union back then. I mean, today people were like, well, Bernie honeymooned there, it's okay, right? But back then, no one really liked the Soviet Union. Back then, it was generally thought of as a bad place. So you had the Reese Committee, which was a successor to a 1952 committee called the Cox Committee. The Cox Committee was started by a congressman named Eugene Cox. It was when the Democrats controlled the House, and he looked into it and he found that basically, yes, there was infiltration, yes, there's bad stuff happening, but didn't really go much further than that. I think it ended when the guy died. And then in 1953, the Republicans took the House, and then you had a guy named Carroll Reese, who started a committee to investigate tax-exempt organizations, the nonprofits, like the Carnegie, Ford, Rockefeller, all those groups, as well as the national education, some of the unions, and some of the other organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations. I know I'm throwing out a lot of stuff here, but I just want to get it into your head a bit. So they were charged to investigate this, and Carroll Reese picked a Yale graduate investment banker named Norman Dodd to be the director of research for the Reese Committee. And what Norman Dodd did is he interviewed all these people. He interviewed people from the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Corporation, all these really, really bad groups which had helped to found the UN, helped to craft American education over the last couple decades, and were trying to basically, what he found is that they were trying to merge America with the Soviet Union. So again, McCarthyism, bad, not good McCarthyism. But it was not entirely unprompted. That's the interesting thing. So let me just get my handy-dandy sheet here. And so Norman Dodd, according to him, this is what happened in the early 1900s between the Carnegie Corporation, founded of course by Andrew Carnegie, and the Rockefeller Foundation, the John D. Rockefellers, Sr. and Jr. He said that they divided the task in parts referring to education, giving to the Rockefeller Foundation the responsibility of altering education as it pertains to domestic subjects, but Carnegie retained the task of altering our education in foreign affairs and international relations. So, this was according to Dodd, he was the research director for the Reese Committee. Actual scheme here between the Carnegie Corporation and the Rockefeller Foundation to divide the role of nationalizing and internationalizing education, or more accurately, indoctrination, in order to have their whole New World kind of order thing, which I know whenever someone says that, conspiracy theory, but this is real. This is what they said, according to Norman Dodd. Norman Dodd did tons of research. He investigated, I think the Reese Committee lasted almost 2 years, and he investigated all this. So, like I was saying, he met with a lot of important people. One of them was a guy named Rowan Gaither, who was the research director for the Ford Foundation. The Ford Foundation still exists today. It does a lot of bad stuff. Ford Foundation. It was the biggest of all. I think it was even bigger than the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation. It was run by Henry Ford's crazy grandson, Henry Ford II, who was a hardcore leftist radical. Probably was pretty into the Soviet Union. So Norman Dodd here is having a conversation with Rowan Gaither. Gaither says, "Mr. Dodd, we invited you to come here because we thought that perhaps, off the record, you would be kind enough to tell us why the Congress is interested in the operations of foundations such as ours." Again, he's the research director for the Ford Foundation. And this is what he says later on. Gaither says, "The substance of the directives under which we operate is that we shall use our grant-making power to so alter life in the United States that we can be comfortably merged with the Soviet Union." They were globalists. They literally wanted a one country in the world. That's what Gaither says. He never admitted this in public. This is an off-the-record conversation that Dodd is retelling. So then Dodd says, "Why don't you tell the American people what you just told me? You could save the taxpayers thousands of dollars set aside for this investigation." And Gaither says, "Mr. Dodd, we would never do that. We wouldn't think of doing that." Do you understand this, Producer Brooke? I'm curious.
They want a one world government.
Yes, he admits this off the record with Norman Dodd, again, the research director for the Reese Committee. Reese Committee investigating all these tax-exempt foundations. So, yeah, I mean, Dodd, if someone tells you that, you're going to be a little stunned, aren't you?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you told me right now that, hey, I actually want to make a one world government.
And of course, it's still, the UN, which was founded by a Soviet agent named Alger Hiss, which he was president of the Carnegie Endowment. But, I mean, this is what they wanted this quite transparently, really, if you just did enough research. They really wanted the one world government, and they still do today. That was what the League of Nations about, then the United Nations, UNESCO, all their other programs. And the EU, for instance, the EU today, the one continent nation that the EU is pushing for, they are all about globalism. That is their philosophy. And so Rowan, but here's the thing. Not Rowan, Norman Dodd, again, research director for the Reese Committee, had been warned. He had been warned just days after the investigation was announced. He was warned by the finance chair of the Chrysler Corporation, who supported the Reese Committee. You know what he was told by the finance chair for the Chrysler Corporation? He was told, "If you proceed with this investigation, as you have outlined, you will be killed."
That's just great.
Isn't it fantastic? That was the kind of people that they were dealing with. In the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Corporation, the Rockefeller Foundation, in addition to a lot of the other groups that Dodd has mentioned, like the Council on Foreign Relations, the John Dewey Society, the Progressive Education Association, the NEA. These groups were so corrupt that this guy from the Chrysler Corporation legitimately thought that he would be killed if he talked about what was happening, and tried to get the facts.
Well, these seem like nice organizations.
They're very nice, yes, indeed. And, well, I think there was probably good reason for say that, because when Dodd was talking to a representative from the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, he was after the ADL guy learned that Norman Dodd was the one who wanted to investigate the ADL, he was asked by the ADL representative, "How do we dispose of you?" That's a nice question to ask. It was at a dinner. It was at a private dinner. He was asked, "How do we dispose of you, good sir? We would really like to get rid of you." That was how much they hated him. And that was how much they hated this Reese Committee. The Reese Committee was the only real attempt to stop what was happening with education, where they learned that in 1910, going back to 1910, the Carnegie Corporation and Rockefeller Foundations had divided the job of nationalizing and internationalizing education, and then they, along with their friends in the Council on Foreign Relations, had literally tried to postpone the end of World War I so that they could alter American life, get the League of Nations to start their globalist programs. After it failed because America never joined the League of Nations, that was mostly just European countries, after that failed, they launched a campaign in education in order to indoctrinate kids starting in the 1920s. And they worked with the Soviet Union. Many of these people in the Council on Foreign Relations. We did the episode about them and their new math scheme. Many of them were actually members of the Communist Party of Russia.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how new math is bad?
No, that's not what I'm going on about today.
All right.
Yeah, new math. I mean, come on, just why? Anyway. Then throughout the 1920s and 30s, they raved, they slobbered, they just drooled all over the Soviet Union. Dewey went on a vacation there. The NEA praised it constantly. They studied Pavlov, who was working for the Soviet government in his studies on how to literally drive people insane. And then by the 1940s, it was already bad. It was already getting really bad. You had Education for Destruction, which was published by Bessie Burche, where she talked about just how bad it had gotten in schools, where schools were literally promoting the Soviet Union and globalism, the one world government. By the way, sources in the description. I'm sourcing from two things here. One is a book. It's a short book called Lines of Credit, and one is Norman Dodd's own report to the Senate in 1954. But literally trying to internationalize education, and you had the Ford Foundation as well. They got in on the fun after the Carnegie Corporation, and it was all one big scheme because they had tried to do it through World War I, but failed because, again, the League of Nations, the United States never joined it, so it was never that serious of an organization, and of course it horribly failed to prevent World War II. So they had to try something different. They tried education. That's what they tried. So this is from my own research. I'll link in the description. This is Norman Dodd's. I'm going to quote from Norman Dodd's personal report to the Senate in 1954. Let me get my handy dandy sheet here. He says that this is what the foundations and universities. He names a lot of universities: Columbia, Chicago, Harvard, Stanford, all these universities. He says that this is what the universities are doing to education in his report. He says that. Decreasing the dependency, he said they are decreasing the dependency of education upon the resources of the local community and freeing it from many of the national safeguards inherent in this American tradition. Again, unquote, you're nationalizing education. That's the idea, getting it away from local communities, which can do a better job of running schools. Certainly.
Because the government has a one-size-fits-all plan.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. He said that. He also says that they are changing both school and college curricula to the point where they sometimes denied the principles underlying the American way of life. Unquote. Producer Brooke, what does that remind you of that's happening right now? The school system.
Yeah,
now.
The school system is
They're still doing it.
They're
They
doing
did
great.
quite the job to the school. Jeez. And then this is Norman Dodd's summary on the educational efforts which are being perpetrated at that moment. He says, its product is apparently an educational curriculum designed to indoctrinate the American students. It contrasts sharply from the freedom of the individual as the cornerstone of our social structure. For this freedom, it seems to substitute the group, the will of the majority, and a centralized power to enforce this will, presumably in the interest of all, unquote. This is Norman Dodd. He was the research director for the Reese Committee. This is the guy they literally tasked to figure out what was going on, and this is his report to it was the House or the Senate. I believe it was actually the House in 1954. Link in the description if you want to read it yourself. It's literally 16 pages. There's really no reason not to. Just check it out right in the description of this video. Yeah, it's very interesting read. Although you got to be able to read a little bit of that. You know, it was handwritten, so you can't. You got to be able to read it. But if you can, you should really check it out in the description. It was a very, very good piece, and it and it describes perfectly the nationalizing and internationalizing of education, And this isn't some wacko. This isn't the local. This wasn't the local janitor. He was a Yale graduate, and he was an investment banker. He was a pretty smart guy, presumably. And this is what he thought was happening with American education, and he got a front seat to it all. Talked with some of the big names, and to this day, this scheme is being continued. You know, in the later 1900s, you had outcome-based education where the government was going to plan your life, mass data collection plans, which are being instituted right now. And basically, today you have the further standardizing of education. You had Common Core and then No Child Left Behind, which again, I don't think a single teacher liked Common Core or No Child Left Behind. I mean, I heard I was in like 4th grade or something, maybe a little later than that, but I heard my teacher literally go on a rant about how horrible Common Core is. She literally went on a rant about it. And then I've had a couple others which definitely did not like the curriculum.
I mean, that's no surprise. Common Core is, it's kind of the worst.
Yeah, and this is really the sad thing is that this has all been destroying the teachers. I mean, I guess the discipline problem started getting worse in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, and it's gotten progressively worse and worse and worse, the discipline problems, because the system is so antithetical to human nature that the natural reaction from kids is going to be for them to react in kind and with insults, profanity, just straight up, you know, disobeying teachers. That's what's gonna happen invariably because the system is flies in the face of all human nature whatsoever, with its stifling of creativity and its non-stop trajectory towards putting the world to a globalist government, basically, to a one world government instead of several nations. Instead of the nation state, it believes in the globalist utopia. Globalist communist utopia. That's what our public school was built for. And of course, back then it was the Soviet Union, and now, you know, it's the late lamented Soviet Union, but we have China and lots of other countries today, and you know, Russia's still around, just chilling in the background. We love Russia, right? It's a wonderful country, I'm sure. Yeah,
but all countries are equal, as you know.
Oh yes. All cultures, all countries. The United States is just another country. By the way, why the hell do we talk about Russia so much? Isn't China is a way bigger threat? Like just saying. All right, but anyway, that's I think I'm about done for the episode today. I don't know how long we've been going on for, but it's been fun.
Long enough.
Alrighty. I hope you were able to follow the episode. I'm sorry if you weren't. You can email me if you have any questions. Just ask me to. I can give you a written summary of all this, or just look in the description. I got a short book linked in the description. It's like 30 pages. It takes like an hour to read. It's called Lines of Credit.
The normal episodes will be less complicated.
Right.
And we're not going to discuss any of this much on the normal episodes.
Yeah, this is kind of if you really want to know what's going on, if you really want to know the history of our education system, and we got more of these planned once a week, presumably. We'll just kind of record. I don't know what time it'll be in the week. Whenever I feel like recording, that's kind of when it'll be. This has been interesting. I don't know if anyone's gonna watch this or not, but we'll see. Only one way to find out. Please do follow us on Twitter in the description. If you're on YouTube, you can subscribe and leave a like. And I don't know how it works on the other ones. I haven't frankly checked them out all that much.
I don't know. Maybe you can heart it or something.
I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, that's gonna be about it. So until next time, I've been your host JB,
And I've been producer Brooke.
We are signing off.